I kind of have a personal story about illegal immigration. I snuck into an apartment house one night. My wife and I didn't have a place to live, so we snuck in under cover of night and sort of squatted there for a few days until the apartment manager caught up with us, and then we had a choice: get legal or leave. Immigration's kind of like that: get legal or leave. That would be a law and order method. Of course, we don't engage in law and order all that much in this country because laws don't apply to everybody equally. Contrary to what people want to believe, that's pretty much what we do, actually. And then there's always the Christian values, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, be kind to your neighbor, love your enemy, yada, yada, yada. And that's all fine and good, except that kind of misrepresents Jesus Christ. So why do I say that? Well, he didn't say everything was hunky-dory. In fact, he said, I am come to cause divisions. And people say he couldn't have said that. Yeah, he did. Luke 12, verse 49 through 53. I came to cast fire on earth, and would that it were already kindled. I have a baptism to be baptized with, and how great is my distress until it's accomplished. Do you think that I have come to give peace on earth? No, I tell you, rather division. From now on, one in the house, there will be 5 divided, 3 against 2, 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Well, they misrepresent Jesus Christ, but that's a favorite hobby of Christians, cherry-picking little verses here and there to suit their proclivity, their doctrines, their ideas, and so on and so forth. But we do the same thing in politics, do the same thing in immigration. It's like, have you heard the argument, we are a nation of immigrants? Bullshit. Were you born here, or you were born in a foreign country? It's believed that about 13% of the American population was foreign-born. So maybe 13% of America is immigrants. All the rest of us were born here. So are we a nation of immigrants? Nah, we're a nation of mostly natives. Some of us have ancestors that go back a couple generations before we find the immigrant. In my family, it's 5 generations. In some families, it's many more generations than that. But are we a land of immigrants? No, not really. But that's the big old media lie. So let's go back. If you want to do Christian values, Judaic values, let's go back to the earliest times. If you want to look up about immigration in the Bible, that's going to be a little difficult because there is no such thing. They didn't have hard boundary lines set out by surveyors like we do in modern times. They didn't have paperwork, to admit you into that territory. You just kind of showed up. And the attitude that God gave Israel was to be kind to strangers. If you want to look up aliens in the Bible, that'll tell you some about it. Sojourners, people that traveled with. And it was always to be kindness. But there was a second part to it. There was a part where you're supposed to get along with your neighbors. If the stranger showed up, he's not supposed to be irritating his host. He's not supposed to be doing everything he can to confound the host. It became a big deal in the New Testament when there were Gentiles becoming Christians just like the Jews, and you had to figure out how to fit in Gentiles with Jews. It became a big issue in Acts 15. They had a little tribunal among the elders of the Christian movement. And they came up with 4 rules. Abstain from sexual immorality, abstain from things strangled, strangling an animal, abstain from blood, and abstain from anything offered in sacrifice to the temple. That was basic rules. They call them the Noahide rules. Noahide rules. They're just a set of rules. In the Talmud, there's 7 rules. In the New Testament, at the first century, there was only 4. But that was how the Gentiles are supposed to get along with the Hebrews. Well, there's also a set of guidelines, if you'd call them, suggestions, that the 4th president set forth. And here's his idea of what foreign-born people coming into this country should do. And their idea was that they would have eventually subscribed to becoming a citizen, so there were certain behavioral patterns required. Might be a misnomer to say that John Quincy Adams required them. This was more like suggestions, or strong suggestions. Willing to learn English, learn and appreciate the founding principles, pledge allegiance and fealty, loyalty to America, and they're willing to work for the greater American community. Well, that all works out pretty well, and that's the way things have kind of been. When we had a large number of Polish people come into this country, we had a large number of Germans, Italians, and that was their thing. They kind of lived in groups where they spoke the common language, but second generation all learned English because they grew up with English, and that was all well and good. But what happens if a class of people or people from a certain group of countries come into this country and they have no intention of assimilating into the general American culture? That situation exists in America right now. It's called the Muslim immigration. You could call it a Muslim invasion, since they have no intention of battering America. So let's go through a few little statistics about the Muslim community. Only 1% of the American population is Muslim. That's still 3.3 million people. And 1% of the Muslims believe suicide bombings and other violence to defend Islam is justified, or at least often so. Another 7% believe violence can sometimes be justified in defense of Islam. That means there's 8% that subscribe to or willing to defend violence. Well, that doesn't sound like a big number until you discover that that's 264,000 people who are potential violent committers because of their religion. They talk about jihad. There's 4 kinds of jihad in Islam. There's one of the heart and soul. That's combating evil within yourself, resisting the devil, resisting outside influences that would corrupt your religion. And number 2 is jihad by the tongue or the pen. That's basically propaganda in defense of Islam. Number 3 is jihad by the hand, which refers to choosing to do what's right to combat injustice and what is wrong in Islamic terms. That means protests, demanding special consideration. Thou shalt not offend a Muslim, because if otherwise we might rise up in some kind of a protest or a riot, or what else? Sword jihad. And then there's number 4, the one that most of us hear about in the media, jihad by the sword, which refers to fighting. But when you look at some of their cultural books and texts, you find out that jihad by the sword is about 98% of all the references. So what's the solution to immigration? Well, to start with, we're going to have to make the process far cheaper and a lot quicker. Right now it's like $10,000 in 7 years. A lot of people that need to come to this country cannot afford that, can't afford to wait the time, especially when they're refugees and their country is war-torn or drug lord messed up. So we're going to have to cheapen it, and we're going to have to make it streamlined, we're going to have to make it faster, and we're going to have to require assimilation or just don't come. That's simple. So we need law and order, we need patience, and we need to make it fair and reasonable and kind for everybody. It's as simple as that, to say it. Implementing it will take an entire generation, even if we have the will to do it. So until then, don't worry about it. Live free.